Go for it.
Well, welcome to all, and thanks for coming. I wanted to start with the land acknowledgement. Welcome to the Longhouse at Lane Community College. Some Native American tribes and nations in Oregon have a long house tradition for dwelling and/or community meetings. While it is not meant to be representative of all Native American nations, tribes, and cultures, it is a safe, spiritual, and sacred place for all Native American students, Native community members, and invited guests. As invited guests of the Longhouse, please treat this building with the greatest respect by not using alcohol, not using profanities, and not exchanging money, and keeping the Longhouse clean, including putting away tables and chairs after your event. So thank you to Lane Community College for allowing us to meet here. And on behalf of the Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors, I welcome you to the 2024 annual meeting. And we have a full agenda tonight, and I will review that for you. The first, after we do agenda review, which is right now, Kirsten Bolton is our executive director, will do the State of the Peach. Then Hillary Anthony is going to do the treasurer's report and annual financial report. Then the work group, both Glenn Johnson and John Alexander will be speaking via Zoom. Jen Lynn Hodgson is going to do the feedback report. And then Steve Gorham is going to do the candidate presentations, and then I'll tell you all thanks for staying. So I think that's it. So Kirsten, our very effective executive director, will come up and give you the State of the Peach.
Thank you, Sandra. Am I sounding? Can you hear me?
Talk loud.
Talk loud. I don't have a problem with that. Well, hello, everyone, and great to see you all here and share another State of the Peach with you. First, I'd sincerely like to thank all the volunteers, artists, restaurateurs, and entertainers for their time, energy, and commitment to making Oregon Country Fair the event of the year in Oregon. Thank you to the Board of Directors and the candidates that are running for the Board of Directors. Their leadership and guidance are so important to keeping the organization moving forward. Every year I am asked, what is my favorite thing to do at Fair? There are lots of wonderful things to do at Fair, but I always come back to the same answer. Being at Dragon Meadow on Friday when the gates open to the public. I am so moved by that moment that it brings me to tears. It is the culmination of countless hours of community effort to get there, and the joy is beyond words or explanation. I hope you have moments like these at the fair. I am delighted to say the State of our Peach is heading toward full recovery after the pandemic. 2024 event helped us regain our financial footing. Our revenue was strong, even though we didn't sell out all of our tickets to the public. We surpassed our 2024 revenue budget, and our finances are moving into a stable position. The focus of 2025 will be to continue this trend. We will work to increase our public attendance, manage our internal size, and continue to address our long-term projects that are needed to sustain and improve the event. We continue to have many investments that need to be made over the next 10 years. Here is an update on the progress we made on the projects I identified previously. First, rebuilding our water system. This is more likely a 10-year project than a 5-year project, as I had suggested last year. We purchased 2 5,000-gallon water storage tanks this year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to plumb them directly into our system. This will be the focus of 2025. The next several years will be the investment in rebuilding the system by quadrants. We will strive to add internet cable and power throughout the 8 to support our technology needs. This will benefit the booths and the public. Since this is a very complex project, I'm moving it to a longer-term goal. Next, I must emphasize the need to invest in site equipment that supports the staff and volunteers and the work they do year-round. We will be requesting a capital improvement project for a skid steer in 2025. We also purchased an electric gator to assist site employees in their movements around the site. We need to purchase 2 more of these, and so we are providing tools needed while minimizing our carbon footprint. The need for alternative transportation during main camps and the fair is an important element in our carbon neutral goals. We chose to rent more electric golf carts this year instead of gas-powered ones. We will continue to pursue electric-powered transportation solutions. We still need to address the increasing requests every year for more gators and golf carts, as it is unsustainable. I encourage crews to think of more environmentally friendly solutions to their site transportation needs. Investing in bicycles, both electric and human-powered, with trailers to transport supplies around the site will move us forward in reaching our carbon neutral goals. As you are aware, we have been talking a lot about the invasive species called the emerald ash borer beetle. It will destroy all of our ash trees over the next 20 years. We started a task force this year to create a strategic plan for the treatment, removal, and replanting of native species. The task force is developing a values metric that all of our response options will be evaluated against. It is my hope that we will have an EAB strategic plan for the board of directors to consider in the spring of 2025. A lot of work is being done on a statewide level to prepare everyone for the effects this will have on Oregon ash trees. This will be a big loss, but OCF will survive it. We have survived many challenges over the past 55 years. It will take all of us working together to create a shared vision of what our site will look like in the future. For several years, the need for a compost slab was discussed. I am happy to say that we finished the slab at the winery this year. The next phase is to have a barn structure built over the slab. This is a long-term project as well, and the timing will be determined based on funding availability and priority of other competing projects. Here's the most challenging thing for 2024, portable toilets. We moved to a new service provider and had the inevitable challenge of training them. Equipment arrived late, hand washing stations were too small, among other issues. We learned a lot and are completely documenting our site needs, location of those needs, service schedules, and access, so that all future generations of Fair Family will have assurance that there is great knowledge and documented detail around our portable toilet needs. We also invested in 50 portable toilets this year. This reduced our rental needs and expense. We need to buy 25 more to meet the needs of main camp. The last item identified as a priority last year is main camp kitchen. And a big shout out to the kitchen crews for all they do for our working crews. Thank you so much to them. We know the wear and tear on the equipment and transporting it every year makes the life expectancy much shorter than it would normally be. We haven't made much progress on the solution to main camp kitchen, and the conversations are continuing. The solution is primarily dependent on funding. It will take a significant investment to upgrade our kitchen facilities. We will continue to discuss the potential of putting mobile kitchens in main camp. I'm projecting a 5-year time frame on this goal. These investments are a part of a larger picture. We must continue to look closely at our capacity. It is too early to tell if the pandemic has changed our attendance levels permanently, and we are doing everything we can to reach our public attendance goals of 15,000 per day. We did move further into the digital age this year by developing a database that takes credit cards for inventory. It took a group effort to make this transition successful. The new database will enhance our communications with members and volunteers. Soon, coordinators will be able to email their crews directly from the database. It is management's goal to give coordinators the tools they need to manage administrative tasks more effectively. We updated the .org site with a fresh new look. It is modern and communicates about our event to the public in a much better way. Additionally, we moved to a new ticket provider, Afton, and all tickets were digital. This eliminated the will call line at front of fair and made for a smoother entry for our ticket buyers. Land stewardship is always an important focus for us. If we don't take care of the land, we won't have the fair we all love so dearly. Climate change is evident. Hotter summers and more river erosion. We must plan for these effects. Path planning, water use, waste reduction, and alternative energy all require our attention. Philanthropy is an essential part of our mission, and it nourishes our souls through giving back to our neighbors. It is the why for what we do for the fair. Our philanthropy comes from the revenue we generate. The fair is the biggest fundraiser, but we also receive between $50,000 and $100,000 per year from generous donors, and we appreciate them. But we can always use more donations. We have great programs that depend on your support, like Culture Jam, the Jill Hyman Vision Fund, the Bill Wooten Endowment Fund, and KOCF. These are meaningful to our community, and I hope you will consider making a donation. It is through these programs that we have made significant donations to other local nonprofits over the years. We put a great deal of energy and focus on timely notification of meetings to encourage participation. Zoom meetings have broadened the diversity of voices in our committees and meetings. The more communication we have among us, the more we strengthen our dedication to inclusivity. Positive communication continues to be integral in becoming allies as we seek. Membership and volunteerism are the bedrock of the organization, and we must nurture our relationships. It is the voice of the membership and volunteers through voting and contributing in committees that drives our success. You help educate, train, and develop the organization to meet its potential. As a community that celebrates and supports alternative lifestyles, we are progressive thinkers. We have to encourage change. We have more in common than what separates us. If we focus on the common threads between us, we can change the world. Please cast your vote for the Board of Directors by October 19th at 8 p.m. at the Eugene office. The Elections Committee will tally the votes on October 20th and post the results to the .net site as soon as they are known. Thank you to the Get Out the Vote group for hosting the candidate forum on September 29th, and the Elections Committee for their hard work making the annual election run smoothly. Check out the merch.oregoncountryfair.org site and buy some merch for your friends and family. We have the entire collection of fair posters for sale, plus select items from this year's fair. We are offering a new item for your holiday gift giving, insulated metal water bottles. Supplies are limited, so place your order early. We are also holding an end-of-year tax-deductible donation campaign. Please make a donation if you are able. Last year, I shared a small excerpt from a piece written by Bill Wooten, one of the founders of Oregon Country Fair, titled Oregon Country Fair, The Early Years. It is a reminder of who we are. The section is titled Community by Choice. This is a community by choice of reason rather than by chance of birth. Reason is found more each day on the side of cooperation, conversation, and community. Reason stands with those who reduce their wants and simplify their needs, who lessen demands upon the world's resources. Reason stands with those who do not ask the world to do for them what they can do for themselves. Reason stands with those who treat neighbors as friends, friends as brothers and sisters, and this earth as our one and only home. Let us stand together. It stands to reason. To endure is to prevail. Thank you for being a community by choice. It is an honor and a privilege to serve as your executive director. I appreciate the opportunity I have been given, and I work tirelessly with the staff and volunteers to help us achieve our mission. Lastly, I want to thank the employees, coordinators, and backup managers who work hard to support our volunteers. They are committed to being of service to our organization. It takes all of us to make the magic happen. With much love and respect for all you and your contributions, thank you, and here's to a great 2025 fair. Next is Hillary, our treasurer, with the 2024 interim financial report. Thank you. Hillary. Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in out there and here, people who will watch it later. You're some of the most engaged members that we have, and it really helps the organization to have your interests and input into what we're doing. Just want to thank everybody too who's contributed to what we've gone through to get us through what we've done in the last 5 years. And that would be the staff and the volunteers and the booth folks, the entertainers, everyone who's touched the organization has been a part of that. If you think back 5 years ago, we were celebrating our 50th anniversary. We had the largest 3-day event that we had ever had, both in terms of the revenue and in terms of the number of people we had on the property. And then within a year, COVID had hit and we were down 2 years. And by that time, the board had gotten itself to a place where it could start to implement the governance model that it had worked on for so long. And we actually hired an executive director, and the board was able to focus more on figuring out what it meant to be a governance board and offload, a lot of the operational things to the staff for the first time in many years of trying. So then we started to come back, came back in a very limited way, came back in a less limited way. And then this year is actually the first year that just by operations that we've made money since 2019. So just that we were able to make it through is remarkable. There's a lot of festivals and organizations that have not made it through these past 5 years. So I think we got to pat ourselves on the back that we've gone through a really difficult time and gotten to this point, and we can take a breath and just be grateful and proud that we did that. Of course, we also got hit with the big inflation as soon as we get there, because there's other things. So there's a lot that we have to deal with still, but I have a lot of faith in us. I think now is a really good time for us to start working on rebuilding our reserves. In the past, our reserves, what we called our rainy day fund, was about 1 day's worth of revenue is what we aimed for. And then we had lots of pockets set aside for bigger projects, but we did not have money that we just thought, oh, that's going to be a reserve that could have gotten us through an event. And we don't know what's coming up. And we don't know if there is a big event that threatens our organization, if there would be something again like the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which actually provided us a year's worth of revenue, or a portion of a year's worth of revenue, not quite that much. So I'm recommending that we, over the next 5 years, up what we're calling our rainy day fund to get it much closer to a full year's worth of revenue. And I think we have to balance that, making that set aside with the other needs, like Kirsten alluded to a lot of the other needs that we have for our infrastructure, for our equipment, just organizational needs and infrastructure needs, property needs. To be able to do that, I think we need some stability. I think we need to plan for our stability, and I think we need to extend our horizon of planning, both in terms of our strategic planning about our vision and our goals and what we're doing and how we do it, as well as our business plan type, our management and our financial planning. All of that, I think we need to press pause and start working on that and not continue business as usual. I think we need to be looking at those things a lot more carefully. If you're at home, you can find the annual meeting report online. If you're here, there are copies back there. The annual meeting report for us is kind of odd. The bylaws say we have to do it at the annual meeting, but that also means we don't get a full year's. So we basically get a comparison year to year, and we get a somewhat complete picture of the event. But then we have to kind of project to get the rest of the year. So that's usually what the report consists of, the financial results as of September 30th, and then a projection for the year end. This year, there's 2 other reports I threw in there. There's one that's right behind the financial portion that is called Worksheet Looking at People on Property. As we've talked about capacity, the metric that I've been referring to people on property. That's a one-day people on property. That's trying to find a term and an analytic that will help us actually compare productively how much impact we're sustaining in one day, how much infrastructure we're needing to provide, how many people we're moving in one day. The board adopted a 35,000 people per day, so that's the 15,000 maximum ticket sales that we're having, and our internal population. And if you look at this chart, it's broken down by type of pass over the years since about 2018. After that huge 2019 50th anniversary, while we were planning for the 2020 fair, which never happened, the numbers we put together, as usual, we weren't able to scale them back. The budget committee actually created a budget that was very similar to the 2019 budget in terms of both money and the number of passes, volunteers who were providing the services. And as we had time to think about it, we had discussions in which many of us thought, yeah, let's not aim for that massive amount. Let's aim for a smaller amount. And we're still trying to find our footing on controlling growth. But what we've been aiming for is about the number of people on property that we had in 2018. And because our internal population has grown somewhat, we are sticking with 15,000 per day of ticket sales and then dealing with the internal population. Well, over the years, we haven't always had a consistent way of grouping our different types of passes, and we haven't always had consistent reporting on those numbers. So these numbers from 2018 to now, I've compiled from a lot of different sources. Registration had a QuickBooks inventory module. We had estimates from the budget for things like the day passes. We had a QuickBooks inventory module for part of the cruise, but not all of the cruise. And so some of this is estimates, some of this is based on budget numbers. And we've reclassified over time. We've reclassified some of what used to get trade passes, some functions started as management, went to be team, and then went to be crew. So even though it looks like the crews have gone up, it's more, the crews haven't gone up nearly as much as it's been teams solidified into crews and some management functions being solidified. That's a lot of what this is representing with the switch. But we are successfully staying under that 35,000 per day, which has been the goal. And the Financial Planning Committee has agreed to recommend to the board that we stick with that number for the time being and keep figuring out what that means in terms of recycling, in terms of parking, in terms of feeding people, in terms of showers, in terms of getting people on and off site, having enough room for people to get in to be able to see stage. So that might not be our magic number in the future, but for right now, it's giving us a baseline to be able to compare to. And as we get our feet under ourselves with our stability and with meeting some of these needs, hopefully we can decide if that's the right number or not, or if there's some other solution that we need to pursue. The other document or the other chart that's in here that isn't usually in here is right after the capacity numbers. And it's a list of some admission numbers over the years. And what I find interesting about this is our admission is not on a single trajectory going up. We actually, in 1992, we had 50,000 tickets sold over the 3 days. And then in 1998, we were at 37. And then in 2009, we were at 46,000. 2015, the year we opened Xanadu, word really got out. We had 52,000. And then our big year, that 50th anniversary, that was 58,000. So we've had more than 50,000 back to 30 years ago, but then we've also gone down into the 30s, but we've consistently been closer to what we're doing right now, somewhere between 40 and 45. That's been our consistent level for decades. We've just gone above and below it over the years. But I find it fascinating that we're not on this single trajectory. And at this point, we've decided we're going to take it under control a little bit more than we did in the past. So also in this report, there's the balance sheet. So if you look at the first financial report in there, you can see with the balance sheet, this is the exact same number totals, that the board would get in this unaudited management, unadjusted, just partial year report, that we actually do have $3 million in the bank, but when Norma and Kirsten are working on the books, they're actually seeing the checking account balances. This is not the checking account balances, but it's the total cash. And some of these are in designated accounts, but more of it, the cash is fluid, and we just know, we just kept track of these different buckets that we have. The buckets that are listed here, some of the are things that I've calculated. The operating money is how much money it's going to take us to get to the next fair, and that's both what we need this year and what we need next year. And then we have the buckets of things that we are legally responsible for, the restricted funds that donors gave with a donor restricted, and those are on there, and that's the KOCF money and the community center money that's sitting there. We have $150,000 that we received as an insurance settlement for the winery house that burnt down, that I'm treating as a set aside that we know we intend to spend for a replacement structure. And then we have the board designated funds. We hold on to in a dedicated bank account the endowment earnings that have been distributed to us that we have not yet distributed in the form of community grants. So that's in a dedicated account. That's $63,000. And then the KOCF donations we have on hand, we keep that in a separate account. So in past years, before we took the restrictions off, we had about $1 million of other designations. And we are still changing our model. Instead of having lots of board designations, the effort is to go more toward long-term capital projects, for projects that are in the works that we know we're going to do, that we need carry forwards, that might need a permit, we might need staff guidance. So those projects will appear at the bottom of the profit and loss, and we will carry forward amounts that are unspent for up to 5 years. And then this effort for us to do more strategic and business planning, that's where the intent and the planning should happen. It's in a document and that has thinking behind it, that's coordinated, not only with what the financial people are saying this is important, but with what the board is thinking, with what the community is planning. We need a better way to be communicating what the entire intent of the organization is, because it's not just about capital projects. It's a lot more about where we're going, how we're fulfilling our mission, and how we're thinking about that. So there's a financial component to it that's really important, but the picture is much bigger than that. So the next financial report in here is the income statement, and the main thing I put in a condensed financial statement, that's budget to actual and projected to the end of the year. And then there's a printout from our QuickBooks that, again, it's cash basis, unaudited, unadjusted, partial year. One of the main differences when it's finalized is those capital projects won't all hit this year's income, and there'll be depreciation, but there's a few accruals. We don't have major changes between our cash basis and our accrual basis, which is used for our financial reporting, but those are some of the significant ones. The biggest story, and I'm going to point out to you on the profit and loss, is our event income exceeded our budget amount by about $200,000, and that was partly because we had a stellar year with our commemorative sales, and we've had a couple of stellar years now. And in the past, that's like our admission, the commemorative sales has gone up and down. We typically budget for it to be about $30,000 of gross profit, the revenue minus the cost of sales. And this year, I think it was about $90,000, and that's maybe one of 3 years where we've had it that high. So while I don't think we can necessarily count on it being that high again, that was really great. And the other place where we went over budget was our past sales. So that's the internal. There was a lot of paid parking. There was a lot of SO sales. So that's where that came from. And the part of also where we had a budget that was fairly close to breaking even, but the other place where we really exceeded our budget is what Kirsten alluded to, is the toilets. We had an initial bid that was coming in, or we had carryover from the prior year of paying over $400,000 for our toilets. So we had a a large budget amount there, and the actual billing ended up being less than that. And as Kirsten said, we still don't really know where we're going to come in eventually. Like if we had an adequate service, would we have been charged more? Like were they charging us based on an estimate that didn't really anticipate the level of service that we required, or did they just not perform and they were billing us correctly? We don't know. So that's an uncertainty that we're going into this next year with. And it could be that if we budget the same amount, that we will end up spending that entire amount on the toilets. So a lot of you would be interested in the detail on that. So you can look at the detail of each crew and each budget line item in that report as well. See, the Financial Planning Committee is voting to recommend equalizing the full price passes, and those are the SO passes and the booth passes and a few other guest passes, with the cost of a 3-day advance sale wristband. So that would be $50 a day or $150. And tied to that, they're also recommending increasing the value of the food vouchers by $1 an hour to $4 an hour, and reinstating the board giving, which during COVID, both because we cut a lot of spending during COVID and because the board had taken on the project of looking at how we're doing our board giving and attempting to do it in a more strategic and professional manner. So we haven't had board giving since 2019 either. And we believe that it's time to bring it back and that we could do so, these changes. The additional recommendations that were presented to the Financial Planning Committee and the board was for us to be going for stability, for us to be attempting to get a 5-year, 5 and 10-year operating plan, to be focusing on infrastructure, safety, right sizing, learning how to live with a more finite universe, not just resorting to growth to solve our problems, which we've done a lot. We need something to happen. Let's add a crew, let's build a crew bigger. And at this point, if we're going to control our capacity, if we're saying, let's not raise fees after this year, let's hold tight, let's, bet on the world not be going through an inflationary period, and that we can hold tight, which, let's hope the world doesn't come at us with more surprises and that we can really do that. But if we can do that, it gives us a chance to look at how can we work in a more collaborative manner, rather than being totally siloed and one crew just keeps doing the same thing. But if we look at, can this crew change what it's doing, or can part of this crew, take on another function, and can we transfer people from one crew to another? I think those are some of the questions that will make us successful in being able to control our growth. Because if all we do is stick to whatever the crews have done in the past and say we're not going to grow and how do we change and how do we adapt? We do have to change internally, and just observationally from the last couple of days of Facebook, let's learn to get along better too. We have to have these conversations with each other. We have figured out how to talk to some people and not to everybody. And operationally, we depend on each other. We're a big web of dependencies that each of us do depend on the other. So let's take a few years, focus internally on how we're working, try to work together better. Let's run more smoothly, and that's my message. Have a great year.
Up next is a report from Lynn Johnson and John Alexander on the EAB efforts of the organization.
All right, can you all hear me? Open, yes. Not, you'll let me know. I'm Glenn Johnson with the Stewardship Educational Venue in Xanadu, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about Emerald Ash Borer or EAB for short. is a beetle from Asia that severely damages and then kills virtually all of the ash trees in an area that it infects. Emerald ash borer was first detected in Michigan in 2002, and since then it has spread throughout the Midwest, the eastern U.S., and more recently in Colorado. And in 2022, it was found in Washington County, Oregon, just outside of Portland in Forest Grove. So I'm going to be talking about some updates and basically what the fair has been doing since then. An important update is that this summer, the Oregon Department of Forestry and some other partners have documented emerald ash borer in some new counties, Yamhill County, Marion County, and Clackamas County. So it's now being found outside of Washington County. And the site in Marion County is about 10 miles northeast of Salem. And it is at that site they haven't found trees that are impacted by it yet, but they have found it in traps. Whereas there's another site on the border of Yamhill County and Clackamas County where there's significant dieback of trees, and it looks like that population may have been there for about 5 years or more. So it's very concerning that it's on the move, and it's that population predates. They think it predates the Forest Grove infestation by at least several years. So very concerning that it's now being found in multiple places outside of the original site. So we don't know how long EAB will take to get to the southern Willamette Valley and to our site. And we might have 15 years if we're very lucky. But we do know when it arrives that it everywhere else EAB has shown up, it kills off virtually all the ash trees within 4 to 10 years. And starting with the crown of the tree, that's where the trees start dying off at the top of the trees, as the trees sort of reallocate resources into the lower part of the trees. So that makes it very dangerous to have these sort of dead tops of trees. So the different parts of the fair have been marshaling resources and studying this. The Land Use Management Planning Committee, the Oregon Country Fair Board and Management, and others. And recently we've convened a task force. Kirsten, the executive director, has convened a task force to help deal with this. At the fair this year, we continued our educational efforts. Several of us did talks at different venues: Stewardship, Shea Ray, Spoken Word, I believe, the arborist, Emma Roberts, and Kevin Hillary, and myself, John Alexander. We all did some education on this. We updated a poster, we had a display, we passed out a lot of pocket guides to emerald ash borer and the damage it does. On average, the EAB will just move a few miles each year on its own, just from flying to the next ash tree. But the main way it gets, through data throughout the Midwest and the East, the main way that EAB colonizes new areas is through being brought there by people in firewood, typically. So another strategy the Oregon Country Fair has been doing is limiting our firewood being brought to the site. We made a guideline change for people not to bring firewood to the site, and we're doing a bunch of things in that arena. As I mentioned, we're convened a task force, and John Alexander is going to talk a bit more about that and the work of the task force. We're also applying for a grant from the Oregon Department of Forestry to secure some resources for the fair and our neighbors to start to plan and respond to this threat, and some resources to actually implement strategies. And we've been building relationships with Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon Department of Agriculture, Oregon Invasive Species Council, City of Bonita, and many other local partners. And we got some great letters of support for our grant from those partners, which reflect on our prior stewardship efforts and our challenges ahead. So, this is a very serious issue for the fair, and a lot of us are doing our best to plan for it. One thing to think about is, there's virtually nowhere that the public goes at the fair that you can't see ash trees. The ash trees are ubiquitous throughout the site. Some places might have, like even in the parking lots where you're not under any trees, all the trees that surround the parking lots, those are all ash trees. Like I said, everywhere the public goes, that's where they can see ash trees. They're most likely under the shade of ash. We have some other important species at the fair: the Oregon white oaks, the maples, But basically the entire site, except for the area between the Ware Barn and Alice's, the upland forest there, the entire rest of the fair is majority ash, to different densities. So we've got a challenge ahead of us, but we're taking some action. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Alexander.
Great, thanks. Can everybody hear me? Can I be heard? Is everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So take a look at this. One of the beautiful things about the fall is that the ash trees change colors before the other ones. And so this aerial photo that was provided by Rosanna Costello kind of shows the extent of what Glenn was just talking about. And so I just want us all to take a moment to look at this, because this shows the change that we're facing. As Kirsten mentioned, these lighter trees that you see, those are our ash trees. And we can expect in the next 5 to 10 years, based on the science and the experience of emerald ash borer hitting the East Coast, that all of these trees will perish under the impact of that. It's going to change our forests significantly. And this is kind of a heavy thing to kind of consider and look at, but based on the community that we've built, we can hold each other in this reality and then think forward as to what will our fair look like when this comes and this happens. And we consider all of these lighter colored forests to change significantly, and the majority, if not all, of these trees to die. And that's a hard thing for us to think about. So we've created, at the board's direction and Kirsten's leadership, an Emerald Ash Borer Task Force. These are members representing different perspectives and groups at the fair. So we have a good diversity of voices. And not only do these folks represent different parts of the fair, but they also represent an incredible amount of expertise, from foresters to conservation planners to community builders. We have an amazing task force here, and we've really been getting a lot of fair family participation. Tom Gannon is showing up a lot. David Hoffman from Community Village. We had some new visitors. We encourage the fair family to join us and our regular Emerald Ash Borer Task Force. We have a goal of having
Hey, John.
a plan. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's seen your presentation.
Really?
That's what people are saying. Right. Yeah, I don't see it, and others aren't seeing it in the chat.
Share. Do you see that, folks?
Yes.
All right. And now the slides. See that? My list. All right, great. Thanks. Now I'm going to speed up a little bit. So we're using a process. Tom Will, who is a colleague of mine and a new fair goer, retired Fish and Wildlife Service, and myself are trained in the process of structured decision making and the open standards for conservation. And these practices are globally recognized as practices for developing strategic investment plans to address the kind of environmental threats that the ash borer is posing to us. I'm going to just very briefly talk to you about the structured decision-making process, how we frame our decisions, frame our objectives, understand our indicators, and then develop alternatives based on the various things that we could be doing to address this, and how we address it, from not doing anything and letting the trees die to be very proactively in proactive sanitation treatments to allow us to begin to remove the ash tree to serve. And then we're going to use the strategies that we develop. We're going to use this decision-making framework to choose the strategies that we bake and that we decide are our preferred strategies in a very mathematical and structured way. So we go from values to math to ranking. And so this is an example of our structured decision-making framework. And the team has worked to try to outline the values that we share at the fair. And we will be doing some public meetings to go over these kind of things. Social values, our land stewardship values, and the values that are going to really drive our operations at the fair and how we deal with this. And so all of these things will be used in a framework that we will to decide in a transparent and scientific way what our preferred alternatives are. If we're going to cut, when we're going to cut, where we're going to cut, how we're going to cut, how we're going to get those trees out before they die or after they die to ensure that we meet our social values, that we maximize transparent planning and participation, that we consider all of the perspectives, that we consider the future and the things that are important to us culturally, and maximize positive communications. These are our social values. How do we consider our land stewardship values to manage our landscape to match the ecological capacity through climate smart future planning that's informed by what the past looked like? How do we maximize the diversity of native trees as an example? Minimize our footprint, ensure the credibility of this plan, not only within the fair, but within the state through science-based planning and monitoring, to hold our feet to the fire to make sure we measure how well we do. And then thinking about the operations. We can't afford to miss another fair because we've got dead trees. And if we miss more than 1 year of fair, there is no fair. So we need to be proactive about what we're doing, thinking about safety, thinking about the longevity of a plan, minimizing costs, meeting state requirements, and maximizing the integration of what this group has done to consider the stewardship of the fair in the past to move into the future. And then from there, we will take various strategies and develop them to understand how those strategies will address the threat, how they'll interact with the stressors such as climate change or the impacts that we have by being at the fair, to change the target and have measurable short-term and out-term outcomes. And what this involves is using key ecological attributes and indicators like canopy cover, the amount of trees we have out there, the amount of non-trees we have out there, to envision a desired future condition that takes into account that we are going to lose the majority of that to that of that canopy. And then we will be developing enabling strategies by getting capacities within the organization, bringing in a coordinator on contract, the equipment that we might need to use to inject the trees that we want to save, action strategies that could be density treatments, sanitation treatments, different kinds of actions we can take to ensure those trees that Glenn mentioned don't cause the safety issues that would cause us to shut down the fair, and develop a response plan following frameworks that in Oregon have been used to result in tens of millions of dollars for saving oak ecosystem habitats, and all around the world for addressing extreme environmental crises, to come up with an action plan that we can fund and move on. And we are in the process of submitting our first grant that's going to go in next week, that's going to allow us to continue this process and start to build these capacities, do the monitoring that we need through a combination of community and citizen-based science and professional science to understand what the current condition is and be able to design and look towards what a future desired condition will be without that canopy of ash. What will it be 15 years later when the ash are gone? What will it be 30 years later when we begin to allow the site to recover from what the ash borer brings, or our proactive approach to addressing that? This is a big challenge that we're facing. We need to face it together, and we need to be supportive of each other, because this is clearly going to involve some environmental trauma on all of us, and we need to get through it together. And we're going to do that through these processes. And so I just want to end with this quote that Glenn brought to my attention. Action is the antidote to despair. Together we can do this. And we're moving fast because it's coming at us. And so I just want to thank the task force. I want to thank the fair. I want to thank the love that we all bring, and the volunteers and the staff, our board, and everybody out there who's got to come together and make this happen. And thinking about what Hillary said and what Kirsten said, there's more here that unites us than divides us. And it's time for us to come together, and it's as an intentional community, to address this significant change. And I appreciate and thank you all for the trust that you've given us to go through this process and develop a plan that will help us move into the future in the face of this extreme threat.
John,
Yes.
you were not sharing your screen at the beginning of your presentation, and several people on the Zoom call have asked that you show the beginning where you were referencing pictures that we did not get to see.
Okay, so here was the outline of what
Are there any images
Glenn
before this section?
talked about, and then here is the picture
Those
of
are
our
the images
fair.
we missed. Thank you.
That's the picture I just wanted us to see. The light colored trees are the ash trees in the fall. That is the forest that we are expecting will change significantly, whether we proactively do something about it or whether we let the borer come and do its thing. But we can't have a fair on the way we're thinking about this is these are dead trees standing. But I really wanted to use that as kind of the solemn part of this presentation, but think of that Edward Abbey quote as the hopeful part of this presentation.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on a successful fair, Kirsten, volunteers, and everybody else.
Up next is the feedback report by Jen Lynn Hodgson.
Okay. I generally can speak loud. So forgive me if I bring out my glasses and read most of my report. Where did it go? Just a moment. It goes right in my phone. Just a moment. And I want to thank everyone who came to the evaluation meeting on site. Even though we were small, we were mighty, and everyone who submitted feedback. You'll notice that there's not a feedback report online yet, and that's because I did some calculations. Last year we had about 200 different submissions from feedback. This year there's over 432. Last year the feedback report totaled 57 pages in total. This year I'm calculating on 115 more or less. I'm not done. I was working on it this morning until like 1 o'clock this afternoon. I will have it finished by the end of the month, if not sooner. It's a lot to go through. I've got it mostly compiled, but now I need to make it pretty to publish. Many people included multiple concerns in one entry, so that takes time to sort it all out, and that's why it's kind of tedious and taking its time to do it right. There's a lot of nuance involved. Early on when I was noticing the feedback, there's some suggestions to improve the feedback report, which I implemented. However, I will not go back to providing a paper form. I'm sorry for those that prefer them, but it's a long and arduous task of deciphering your handwriting and hand typing in all of the notes, which would add to all of this time for me just doing copy and paste. But anyone who does not have internet, I will happily still receive handwritten forms and responses. As you read the feedback report, remembered that many comments were prefaced with appreciation and love of fair before they went into their various concerns. So I split them out into the kudos section, which will be at the bottom of the feedback report. Some of the beginnings started with, which I brought forth to you, and it touched me. Children and adults and elders all being free to play and interact with each other. It's a beautiful thing, and the amazing creativity and skill of the artisans, entertainers, food preparers, ambiance. It's all so incredible, really. And then there was another piece. I stopped and read the whole history of the fair in Elders area. It brought me to tears with gratitude for the vision and dedication of so many people. My deepest gratitude to you all. And this last piece. After just returning home from fair and reflecting on the weekend, I'd be remiss not to communicate some issues that seem to make the fair feel less sparkly and a bit more stressful from my perspective. Overall, lots of fair magic nonetheless, and I remain in awe of the glorious community we create each year, and I am grateful. It's comments like these that remind me why so many of us feel like family and why the Oregon Country Fair is much more than a festival or a show. It's also why fair participants raise their concerns. Overall, the new themes, sanitation, a new this year's Sunshine Database, climate change, and theft. I must say, of those 115 pages so far, 30 of them are all dealing with sanitation, including sanitation, hand washing, and showers. So there were a handful of comments about the fair's six-pack serviced by our OCF sanitation crew, and they were all positive. The volume of comments on sanitation makes me think we need to change Maslow's need hierarchy from home to sanitation. Regarding the Sunshine Database, I think most of the comments were that it was not user-friendly, made coordinators' jobs much more challenging, and lacked critical information in the fields for the booth folks. People are also concerned about how we'll handle climate change. There was a lot of reports about the heat this year, which we have no control over, but we keep having hotter and hotter summers earlier and earlier. There's many calls for more shade structures, especially at main stage, the sticker booth, and any of the other open areas. How are we going to manage our pathways to prevent so much dust? And is it possible to move the fair date to another month, perhaps one that's cooler? And if I think about it, we have such a limited window between rain and fire, and then trying to meet all of the other festival schedules. This is the first time that I remember there being more than one comment about theft. One person wondered if the theft and broken windows in the parking lot was in part caused by not providing a ticket or other credentials to enter site. Others wondered if theft is the result of not instilling our fair values into the many new participants since COVID. I will have the feedback report as well as the reports from the annual evaluation meeting published on the .NET site by the end of the month. Two of the topics discussed in the evaluation meeting were who are we and what are our values? And that was followed up in the second session by leadership, which is a lot of it was instilling that it is up to our leaders at whatever level you are a leader to communicate what our fair values and our ethos are. From the aha portion at the end of the evaluation meeting, some of the comments we had was that we need a better understanding of our connections across generations, across crews, and all of our fair participants. And that leadership interactions, are not just for
I was trying to fix things at home.
Leadership interactions are not just for Whitebird and security. They're for all of us. It's part of our fair ethos. Respect, fun, and get the job done. And imagine how can you pass the chip on. Thank you.
Before we move into the next section, Glenn Johnson from Zoom had a follow-up that he wanted to be read. And it states, in my report, I think I missed 2 updates on what OCF is doing. The OCF is an official EAB trap site, the only one in Lane County, that will help us to see if it is on site. This is a monitoring tool, not a prevention or eradication tool. This year, we had 6 traps at OCF. Thank you, Kevin Hillary, Fair Arborist, for implementing this. And the second, Fair has been ramping up our tree nursery efforts, being run a team from Vegemanics and others, including Alexis, our site manager. Thank you.
So, excuse me. So the next section we're going to do is hear from the candidates for the board this year. My name's Steve Gorham, or Grumpy at the fair. I'm currently a bum, backup manager. So we're going to do it in alphabetical order. Each candidate has 6 minutes. I'll try to tell the candidates when there's 30 seconds left. The candidates can handle it however they want. Anybody who has questions will be part of that 6 minutes. So the candidate can say a statement and take questions, or not take questions as they choose. If you have a question and you are online, put your name in the chat and we'll try to get to you. And if we have questions from the audience here and online, we'll alternate or try to alternate. So that's how we're going to do it. And we're doing it in alphabetical order, and the first candidate is George Braddock.
Good afternoon. This time is short. I'm primarily going to read my comments for today. So good afternoon. As I was preparing my speech for today to you volunteers of the Oregon Country Fair, I recall a story about William and Catherine Booth. They were the founders of the Salvation Army. They wanted to send a message around the world to all of their volunteers to be inspired. So when William headed to the telegraph office and handed his message to the teller, he said it was much too long and he could not afford to send it. So he rewrote it. Again, the operator said, "Mr. Booth, this is still much too long." Booth asked what he could afford to send. The operator said, "You can only afford to send 1 word." Booth said, "Then just send this word, others." I think that you are like Mr. Booth's volunteers, and what you do is for others. Thank you. The Ritz sees itself as first and foremost being of service to the fair, provide a safe and welcoming place to get clean, enhancing the hygiene and sanitation in a place that does not otherwise have access to public services.
Sorry, George, you move this up.
We are here for our patrons, yes, but also for others who come to the fair. We open-handedly maintain Just Say Please Park with the best shaded seating and seats in the fair. We sponsor public art, such as the Dragon Fountain, decorated by the fair children, Odyssey Sculpture, the Clamshell Gathering, Place and Fire Circle with informal entertainment. We help set up and tear down, craft demo, and provide power, water, and light. In any way we can, we support the success of the fair. I've been on board for 8 years. I served as vice president for 5 of those years. I'm on the financial planning committee, the budget committee, and fixed access committee. For 48 years, I have been the booth representative of the Ritz and welcomes everyone and is fully accessible. Beyond that, I have given a significant amount of time and expertise and resources to the Oregon Country Fair. I was a general contractor for more than 40 years, spending the last 20 years in the design and construction of homes for people with significant physical and intellectual disabilities. I attend board meetings prepared to discuss the issues on the agenda. I am not in love with the sound of my own voice and don't feel the need to say things that others have already said. I am dedicated to the ongoing success of this organization. In the 8 years that I have been on board, we have had 6 different executive directors. This is troubling, as inconsistent leadership is often cited as a major contributing factor to the demise of nonprofit organizations. That being said, I come to believe that this number 6 is a magic number. Kirsten Bolton, in just 3 years, brought long overdue organizational changes, fiscal discipline, and a great staff to the show. Her leadership has done much to make the 2024 fair the most profitable in our history. Our relationship with the board is positive and professional, and she's responsive to the directions of the board. We are fortunate to be able to be in the final position that we are today, but I caution us not to be compliant or complacent, excuse me. There are significant challenges and headwinds in our future. Many nonprofit organizations fail because of COVID. For the OCF, the shuttered venue grant enabled us to maintain employees, steward the huge piece of land that we have, and maintain our buildings. These government handouts may not always be available in the future for other disasters. I want to acknowledge the outstanding work of our accountants and bookkeepers, whose professional work keeps us informed about our financial resources and keeps us out of trouble by filing flawless and timely reports to government and agencies. Like poor leadership, bad financial planning and poor accounting can bring down nonprofits. Having a profitable year is fantastic. Now we need a long-term strategic plan, but first we need a flexible, adaptable business plan. We need to spend our money wisely. And in trying to not say what others have already said, Kirsten has mentioned many of the projects that we have facing us that all need funding, and it's going to be a matter of how we do it, how we prioritize them, and how we make the resources available. So I'm going to skip my list. But I do want to quote Hillary in this moment. And she said to me when I was talking to her about this today, she said, "We must balance everyone's priority with the real-time operational needs of the organization." And I think that is very, very true. This board has begun the long overdue process of reviewing the scope of work and processes and responsibilities and authority of all our committees and practices. I wholeheartedly support this process. If I'm elected to the board, I will continue to support this transition from an operational board to a governance board. I will continue to prioritize safety first. I will support the efforts to bring us fully into the digital age, including an accurate database, a wider Wi-Fi access, and other improvements to electronic communications. I will look for ways to control our internal growth without compromising the quality and access of our event. I will continue to support EDI and other programs that can improve accessibility and quantity and quality of people at our fair. Thank you for your patience.
30 seconds left.
I'll take questions if that's appropriate.
There's no questions.
Anybody have any questions? You have a question, everyone?
Did you not?
Yes?
No.
Okay, that's it. Next is John Davis.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm John Davis, and I'm running for the Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors. Thank you so much to everyone in the Fair family for considering me as a board member. I feel very humble speaking to such an important group of Fair family. It is really each of you that has made this such a wonderful event for so many years. Thank you for all your hard work, especially the elders that have been here from the beginning. When I was young, growing up in Eugene in the 70s, my dad worked as a yurt salesman and a dome builder. I grew up with the culture of the fair. The values of the 60s and 70s are still important to me today. These values have changed the world, but there is still work to be done. We face new challenges to the fair's values that started our organization. I support the fair's mission and tradition of love, kindness, open-mindedness, and support without judgment. The traditions of the fair, the food booths, the craft booths, the educational areas, the spirit of volunteerism and site prep, Vegematics, the music and the performers, the whimsy, each are important culturally and represent a jewel in our community. In addition, the fair has become an economic engine for the region, helping others and allowing us to give back. The Oregon Country Fair is a regionally significant event that has sent the fair family all over the world to inspire others with wonderful values. I'm qualified to help because I've been fortunate to have served on a number of different boards. Over the years, I'm currently the president of the board of the Wildish Community Theater in Springfield, bringing the arts to the city of Springfield. I've also served as the president of the Mills Davis Foundation for the last 10 years, providing support for organizations for youth engagement and ecosystem restoration. For the last 5 years, I've served as secretary of the board of the Springfield Public Library Foundation. I've learned a lot of valuable skills, especially regarding SWOT strategic planning and revising bylaws and mission statements. My work has given me experience and perspective in how to create strategic plans, fundraise, support philanthropic goals, build and maintain community, and protect and manage property. I've been a real estate agent for 15 years. I'm well-versed in best practices for managing property and other assets. I understand the local markets and land use issues. I've worked at the fair for over 20 years, starting in my late 20s for the history booth, and then building and setting up the operational yards for the last 7 years. I've also become very good at negotiating in a way that respects all members and inspires teamwork. I enjoy working together with leadership in a positive way. One of the primary responsibilities of a board is the fiduciary responsibility to support the organization in a way that centers on our mission and values. It is also important to support the staff and volunteers in their work to implement policy. I deeply value having a robust, safe, and magical event that respects our land, is safe, and that brings us together again as a community. Recently, we have overcome difficult moments, and the fair will continue to bring us together. Our fair family is inspired to constantly improve and to innovate. In that process, the fair brings us each closer every year with our chosen community. It celebrates the values that we have all shared for over 50 years and are now sharing with our children and grandchildren, who are picking up the torch and bringing new light, vision, and energy, as well as keeping us up all night. Keeping this important experience alive for future generations is critical to each of us. I love the opportunity to serve you on the board by listening carefully to your concerns and work collaboratively with the board to achieve the wonderful dream that is the Oregon Country Fair. I want to talk about some of the issues that are important to me in the community. I'm not as involved in the day-to-day operations as some of the other candidates, but what I bring is a strong background in building relationships, strategic planning, and philanthropy. I believe my outside perspective and years of board-level experience could offer a fresh approach that would benefit the fair. Philanthropy is close to my heart and aligns perfectly with the fair's mission. I have experience as a trustee and founder of a family foundation that annually awards funds to local organizations. We focus on funding young people's potential, expanding family access to resources and services, investing in the well-being of our local and global community. We always work hard to conserve and restore natural habitats for future generations. As I mentioned, I serve on the boards of the Springfield Library and the Wildish Theater, both focused on the community, education, and the arts. I'd love to help the fair grow its philanthropic work, supporting local arts and education through programs like Bonita Schools, Culture Jam, and the Jill Hyman Vision Fund. The board has made significant progress gathering data to guide decisions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Every organization is stronger with greater diversity. As a board member, I'd like to help set clear goals and timelines based on that data. I believe in having a North Star for decision-making and fully support using an equity lens to break down barriers and promote diversity at every level. The fair has acquired a lot of land over the years, and figuring out how to use it best is always a topic of discussion. With my real estate experience and property management background, I can help explore the possibilities for our land and work collaboratively with the membership to create goals that reflect our shared vision. With the threat of the Emerald Ash Borer, now is the time for careful strategic land use planning. Overall, I bring a fresh perspective and a lot of experience working on boards and focus on building stronger communities through education and the arts. I'm excited to offer these skills to the Oregon Country Fair and work together to achieve our vision. Thank you so much. Please vote for me as a board member. I will work hard to listen and serve each fair family member well. Thank you very much.
John Gofsky, and he's online. So hopefully we'll see him this way.
I'm here online.
Go ahead.
Should I start? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is John Gofsky, and I'm really honored to be here, although I'm kind of sorry I'm not here. And I'm sorry I'm not conveying that respect to you by being in the room, but I'm in Santa Cruz County and just can't be there this evening. I'm going to try to keep it brief and maybe we can, I understood there's time for questions as part of the time because I haven't heard any questions yet. If that's true, I'll just keep this really brief and I'd like to hear questions. I'm a booth rep. I have been a crafter and booth rep at the fair for 40 years. I'm on near the top of Shady Lane. I serve on the craft committee currently. I am not an incumbent. I've never been on the Oregon Country Fair board, so I'm a little of an outsider in that respect, although I've been very involved with the fair for quite some time. I also attended many board meetings over the several years. But I do live in Santa Cruz County, so I cannot be there all the time, but through the wonders of Zoom, I think I can participate and add what I can to the fair and be effective. Outside of the fair life, I teach. I'm at a community college. I teach some design stuff. I have a long history of working with political, social justice, peace, environmental groups. I currently do a lot of my activism work with labor unions. I'm very involved in the California Federation of Teachers. I've worked as a contract negotiator many times with the union. I've worked with groups that have operated on everything from strict consensus to strict Robert's Rules of Order and everything in between. I can't make promises that I think I'm going to get all this done because if elected, I'd be one person on a, well, let's call it a diverse board. I think that coming in fresh could be helpful to this board. I think it's always good to have a variety of perspectives, and I would like to think that I'm very good at building consensus and getting along with people, even if I don't disagree with them. So I think that we need a lot of that attitude these days. You've heard all the issues that are really important. It's, growth, emerald ash borer, long-term planning, visioning, infrastructure, water, toilets, tech, Wi-Fi, online elections, increased food vouchers. I don't know if somebody said that, but that's on my list. But anyway, I think I'll stop and take questions. Is that okay? I don't need to fill up the whole time to talk, right? Can we have questions?
Yes, you can definitely take questions, so.
I prefer to have questions and stop talking. Thank you.
Anybody here have any questions? Remedial? You have a question coming up?
So what is your main motive for being on the board?
Thank you. That's a great question. One I've asked myself many times these days. I think to boil it down to an essence, I love the fair and I'd like to give back to it. And I think I could help to make it better with some energy and skills that I possess. That's it in a nutshell. I do have certain things that I would focus on. Obviously, we're all going to be involved at the board on figuring out how we grow or don't grow and make use of the resources we have. The emerald ash borer is going to be a huge priority. But one of the things that I'm really into is visioning and long-term planning. And I know the fair has done quite a bit of that in the past, but I would like to continue that tradition and really intensify it and think of very long-term planning. We heard some of the challenges that we're going to be hit with. The emerald ash borer is a really excellent look at why we need to have long-term planning, because that is going to be something affecting us for many years. But the infrastructure needs, you heard about the water and the toilets, the Wi-Fi needs to be improved. There's so much that we need to work on. So it's going to be a balancing act. And when I come in, if I come in, I will evaluate all these things and try to prioritize. I know that there are a lot of concerns that crafters such as I have. I do come with a craft and booth rep background, and I think we need that voice always on the board, especially about the Wi-Fi. So I know that that's a long-term infrastructure project. I'd like to help move that along. I would like to see us move more into online elections. Because it would save money, and I think we can involve more people in the elections ultimately. There are some tech challenges that we're on, but I know that the database to me is a step in the right direction. I know it can be improved, but I think it will be, and I think it's really great that we're doing that. Yeah, I'll stop there. More questions?
Anybody else have questions here? There's no questions online. You've got 60 seconds left. You want to use it or
John
not?
Alexander has his hand up in chat.
I'm sorry, we have one question in chat.
John
Oh,
Alexander.
question in chat.
Tanya Alexander.
Yeah, hey, John, it was great to talk to you when you were thinking about joining the board. And I mentioned some of the challenges that we have, and I'd love to hear what kind of advice might you bring or approaches might you bring so we as a board can help to better build trust amongst ourselves with our membership, with our committees, and lead in a way that hopefully gets all of us to honor each other's perspectives and work more closely together in a more positive light. What might you help to bring to us to build that trust and that function that I think, so we can better reflect the fair and less reflect the world?
So you have
Wow.
30 seconds to answer.
Okay. Wow, that's a good question. You know, I think some of the problems, I mean, probably many of the people in the room and on the Zoom room have attended board meetings. You know, there are a lot of opinions and a lot of viewpoints being expressed, and sometimes they're not always expressed in a way that I would think of positively, and emotions to kind of take over. I think that it will be good to try to listen. I'm going to come in and try to listen to a lot of people, but I find that communication is really something that we need to focus on here at the fair, especially at the board level. When I go to a meeting and there's dramatic things seem to happen at different board meetings that seem to blindside people, and like that's an indication that there's not communication happening outside of those meetings that's so crucial. So I think increasing communication, I know that's a general answer, and I don't have time to get in specifics, but I think I would focus on that.
Thank you, John. Sorry, the time is up. Thank you. Next is Lois.
I'm kind of curious how many people we have online.
We have 17 people watching on YouTube, and we have about 17 also in the Zoom call.
That's very consistent with our board meetings. And we have actually sometimes up to 30 on each. It's very interesting. I really appreciate doing stuff online, though I really miss getting meeting in person. I think one of the questions, a way of solving John Alexander's last question, is that if we meet in person, we get a chance to know each other better. And that way we end up working better together. It's one of the things I've seen over my years at the fair. This was my 58th fair. I think, and about a third of this time of the fair, I've been off and on the board. So I think one of the things we really need to consider is our history. I was really tickled to see Kirsten bring up Bill Wooten's words at the beginning, because I think we really need to listen more to him. I'm not a real good public speaker, better in meetings. Reverence for the land. That is one of the things that we all talk about. But I think that one of the things that we need to do now is manage our forest. We really can't let it go wild anymore, as much as we like that environment. And the climate is changing, so we need to really look at identifying our trees, figuring out how we're going to manage it. The emerald ash borer is a very big threat to me. I personally think that we'll probably see an infestation within about 7 years. And after that, we have 3 years to do something before the trees start getting dangerous and dangerous enough not to be able to camp under. So it's one of these things I think we need a long-term plan, a short-term plan. And I think we're well on our way with the Emerald Ash Borer Task Force. I really appreciate their work that they're doing, and I think they're going to be able to figure out how we're going to financially be able to deal with this because it's going to be a big project on the fair site. I personally support biochar as a way of dealing with our detritus that we will be generating. And I think we need to think long-term range of how we're going to chip a lot of trees, because in the next 10 years, we're going to have to start thinking of it. And we could use the chips both for fertilizer, paths, things like that. So I think that really works for us. I'm interested in getting rid of the big burn pile. I'm curious to see how that's going to deal with, because it's not a burn pile. I think we need to bring in a trailer chipper and with a grappler and just start shoving stuff in one and rent it at the first. My personal interest is to take the site back to an oak savanna, which it was 200 years ago. When I saw Dr. Daniel Lewis's presentation on what it was like when the Kalapuya lived here, I came to realize his pictures were showing us the fair site, though they weren't. They were over in Fern Ridge, but it really made a link impression with me that that's what the site originally was for thousands of years. And it's only been in the last 200 years that the ash forest has grown up and taken over the riparian areas. So I personally am interested in seeing if we can go back to some sort of oak savanna for our site. It would mean quite a bit of changes in camping, but we're going to be ending up with quite a bit of changing in camping, because if we lose 60% of our trees, in the next 10, 20 years, we have to really think about how we're really going to do the site. I'm intrigued by the Mackenzie River Trust buying 400 acres between Bonita and Eugene and trying to reestablish the oak savanna in that area. So there's a potential partner for if we want to go that way. I really support the 7th generation motion that the board passed years ago, that we consider in all our actions what it will be like 7 generations down the road. And I also support the carbon initiative, but I think for us, it is going to be an extremely difficult, long project to try and meet that. So I'm personally interested in solar energy offsets in that range. We have land that we could do solar generation on. I would love to see us do a 500 kW project on the compost lab building that we've talked about for several years now in our beach power projects.
30 seconds left.
Pardon?
30 seconds.
I also support the work we've done in Oasis and Rainbow Village. I helped shepherd that through path planning, and I think that really has been a success. And I also really appreciate the path planning work that they did on the new Native American craft banner area. That was something we've been asked for a long time, and that was a project that really went well this year. So I'm ready to continue working. Thank you.
Lisa Parker.
Six minutes is a really long time to be standing up here talking. I'm not really very comfortable with public speaking, but it's if you want to serve on the board, it's something you got to do. So here I am. First, I want to thank all of you for coming out, and those of you who are tuning in online as well. Hopefully you had a chance to read my candidate statement, and perhaps you watched Candidate Forum, so you may already know a little bit about me. I want to talk about what it means to me to serve on the board of directors of the Oregon Country Fair. The purpose of the Oregon Country Fair organization is to sponsor the Oregon Country Fair event. In other words, the organization provides the container for the event. The fair doesn't exist in a bubble as much as I think a lot of us might like it to. We have to interact with the rest of the world. We deal with the IRS, county commissioners, law enforcement, the communities of Bonita and Elmira that provide a home for our events. The job of the board is to ensure that the organization complies with all of the various requirements placed on us by these outside agencies. That is how the board protects the container that allows us to continue to create events and experiences that nourish the spirit, explore living artfully on earth and authentically on earth, and transform culture in magical, joyous, and healthy ways. In this capacity, the board is ultimately responsible for everything that happens within the organization and at the event. Being a governance board does not relieve us of these responsibilities. One of the challenging aspects of board service is the duty to maintain confidentiality. This duty often requires directors to remain silent in the face of misinformation and even personal attacks. We must set aside our own personal interests in our service to the fair. I understand how frustrating it can be for members to know that something is happening but not know what it is. And it's the responsibility of the board to provide as much information to the membership as possible while maintaining our duty to keep that container I spoke of intact and whole. But all of the challenges that the board has faced are overshadowed by the existential threat of the emerald ash borer, or EAB. We need to be prepared for its arrival. This is a time for us to come together right now, just like we have in the past when faced with other existential threats, such as the planned rerouting of Highway 126 through the site, or the threat of forfeiture of our land by the district attorney. We have weathered these challenges together. Even if the threat of the EAB were not looming on the horizon, we will still face ongoing challenges related to the sustainability of the fair. These include balancing the physical carrying capacity of the land, the financial realities of this now enormous operation, our infrastructure needs, and the conundrum of adapting to generational change without losing the essential nature of our essential events. When I first ran for the board in 2018, I was really surprised to be elected. I've never been a part of the in crowd. I've been an outsider my whole life. Growing up, my family moved constantly. I went to 8 different elementary schools. Being an introvert, it wasn't easy to make friends, but at the fair, I feel like I belong. Over the last 43 years, I've washed dishes in a food booth, shoveled rock in the hot sun, washed water barrels and delivered water, and put Band-Aids on some of your boo-boos. The fair has been one of the few constant in my life, and serving on the board has been such an honor, a privilege, and a tremendous source of personal growth. And I hope that you will allow me to continue to serve.
30 seconds.
Thank you for being us.
So I think that's it, although I think we may have nominations from the floor. I don't know if we do that anymore.
Oh, it's right here on the agenda.
Do we have any?
On the agenda.
Yeah. I think we're done.
Just ask, are there any nominations?
Are there any nominations from the floor?
Look around. Nobody see if they want to do this.
I don't see any. None from the Enid Gallery. So thank you all. Sandra may say, gentlemen,
I have one thing.
I
It's
can't.
not a nomination, but I forgot the very last portion of my report.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
She forgot the last part of her report. She wants to add it now.
Okay, come on up. Sorry, I had to take my hearing aids out.
Forgot to turn the page on my report. So thank you for indulging me.
And I hear that Oregon won the game.
I want to add that I've been doing feedback for about 20 years, and it feels like it's time to start passing this on. I'm starting to work with Pam Tyrrell to show her what it involves and all the nuances of creating the feedback report. She was hoping to be here, but she's not had another commitment. So she will be helping me over the next couple of years, and we will be transitioning from me doing the bulk of it to her taking it on. And I just wanted to give this as an early introduction, and thank you for letting me be part of feedback for all of these years.
Well, on behalf of the Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors, thank you all for attending. Thank you to all the really wonderful candidates. We have lots to choose from, and well, not lots. And be sure to vote. And thanks to the staff and the election committee for putting this together tonight. We really appreciate it. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.